What's the most important resource that you have? If you really thought about this deeply, I think you'd come to the same conclusion that Joey and I did. It's time. In our newest book, What's Without Wall Street, the 3 steps to financial freedom through passive income, we talk about how are we tracking that time? What is the thing that we can do to get more of that time back?
That's right. If you've ever been listening to our podcast and thought, man, it would be amazing if I could take all the things that you guys have learned over the last 10 years and just summarize them, put them in some way to easily digest them and take action, that's what this book is all about. You're not going to want to miss it. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/new book and get your copy today.
All right, gentlemen, let's break down this topic. Like I said, it's in 3 different places. I want to talk about always being in the posture of learning first. Jonathan, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think sometimes we can learn from our circumstances. We can learn from the places that God takes us in our lives. And sometimes those are on the mountaintops. Sometimes those are in the valleys. And sometimes those are from other people. It's like, Luke Skywalker and the hero's journey. If you study just the nature of a story, you're a character in a story. And so some of you have heard my story before. I was at a place where I was putting groceries on a credit card. What I was trying to do wasn't going so great. It was actually going really well. It just wasn't going so great financially. And so sometimes you can hit rock bottom. And a lot of times you say, whenever you're in those situations, it's like, why, Lord, why would this happen? This must mean I'm doing the wrong thing, or this must mean something else. But a lot of times we can assign that meaning to our story. Now, don't just make up something, but our perspective is so important. Desperation, going through a time of desperation, hitting rock bottom can actually serve us if we'll allow it to serve us. Sometimes safety, or being like on that precipice of safety, is actually a curse, because we're just safe enough that we're afraid that we're going to lose what we do have, and so we don't risk anything else. Well, desperation and rock bottom, guess what? You got nothing left to lose. And so that's what happened to me. If I never would have hit rock bottom, if I never would have been putting groceries on a credit card, if I never would have had to sell my grandmother's coin collection just to pay the taxes on my house, if that would have never happened, I never would have been propelled to where I am now. And so, whenever you're in a posture of learning, you're in those situations, you've got to find that person who can come alongside of you. I was just last week at a mentor of mine in real estate. He allows us to come to his cabin in North Carolina graciously, and got to spend time with him again over dinner. I remember, 8-9 years ago, I had the phone call. I was like, Bill, I need to know how to do this. Like, how do you do short-term rentals? Where do you go? Where do you find deals? How do you make sure that it's right? And he spent 2 hours on the phone with me, and I took notes and notes and notes. I still got the file in my filing cabinet of all those original notes that he took, just pouring into me. So if you'll be in a posture of learning, never having that sense of you've arrived, then there's always something that you can learn from someone else. There's people out there who are, a true investor. They're not just investing money. They also want to invest in people. And to see that outcome in your life, that's going to be a great return for them. So whenever you go back to them and say, this is how I'm doing, this is how the deal went, whenever they see that fruit in your life, it gives them great satisfaction. And so seek out those people who, of course you don't want to just take all the time, but there are people who will gladly pour into you.
I love that. So Travis, we talked about that. This is going to be the greatest lessons we've learned in investing. And man, being in a posture of learning from the situation that you're in, and sometimes it's desperation, and learning from mentors, man, it's so good. Jamie, you got a lot of slack pull, man. This guy's bringing the heat. What's your take on this?
Man, yeah, that was great. I'm going to echo learning from people, right? Learning from people who have been there before. I think my biggest lesson from others, at least early on, that just changed the way I thought about investing in general, was learning about the velocity of money, right? And so my story was when I first started in real estate, I think you guys have heard this as well. I found out I was having twin girls. My wife was going to have to stay at home. And I was like, I have to do something other than just my W-2 job to provide the life that I wanted. So I went headfirst into real estate, and I wanted to start doing the BRRRR method, where you buy a house, you renovate it, you what is it? You rent it, you rehab it, and then you refinance and repeat the process, right? So you pull all your money out. Well, we had come into a situation in a couple of years where we had some money to be able to do that. So I was using some bank money, using some of my own money, but I was using most of my own money to go and rehab the properties. And it would take usually 3, 4, 5 months to rehab and rent the property. And then the bank wanted to see usually about 6 months of a renter being in there before they were willing to refinance the property. So my first BRRRR took about 9 to 12 months before I was able to get my money back out of the property. It just took a long time to get that money back out. And a colleague at a real estate meetup that I went to said, why are you using your own money in these deals when you could be using other people's money and doing something else with your money, right? Trying to make money in two places at once. If the deal's a good deal, you'll be able to cash out and pay off your investor, and then you could be investing your money somewhere else. And so I started doing that. I started reaching out to private lenders, personal connections that I knew, said, hey, here's what I'm doing in real estate. Would you like to make a great return on your money? And that allowed me to use someone else's money to go buy a property, rehab the property. I would rent it, refinance it, and cash out the investor, right? And that took the same amount of time, but now I had my capital to go start doing my own private loans, to maybe go invest in other syndications or other small apartment complexes, whatever I chose to do. But I was making money in two places at one time. And that just really, really stemmed the learning about finances. And I said, there's got to be a better way to do this, a better place to store my cash. And when I found out about the infinite banking concept and IBC, and I realized I could do 3 things at one time with money, my mind was blown, right? So I could put my money into my IBC policy. It was going to grow and compound forever, even if I took a loan against my policy to go make an investment of some sort. And I could use other people's money to come and continue to do my real estate deals. And now I had 3 different things going on at one time with the same dollars that I was using when I first started, that was only doing one thing at one given time. And for me, that just changed my whole mindset and sped up my process towards financial freedom even greater than it was before.
No, that's so good. I mean, I think we have to learn through our experiences as we're going through this process. And Jamie mentioned a process called infinite banking. If that's new to you, if you're new to the podcast, haven't heard about that, that comes from a book called Becoming Your Own Banker. You can go to whatsaboutwallstreet.com/IBC. We have a whole webinar that breaks down this on a one-on-one level. But the biggest idea that I've taken from that concept of infinite banking is that we really want to be building ourselves a cash snowball, right? I mean, our buddy Dave Ramsey, he says that we want to have a debt snowball, right? We want to pay off debts and build this snowball. But I think the opposite is true of what we're trying to accomplish here. Is we're trying to create a cash snowball. And infinite banking just gives you ability to use your cash to continue to get bigger and bigger while you're leveraging it to do more and more and more. That's velocity of banking kind of in motion. For me, around this concept of what was one of those greatest lessons from learning, like being in the position of learning, I bought a long-term rental in 2007, one of the first investment deals I ever did outside of Wall Street. And to be honest, it was not that great. And it was just not great for me. I mean, I didn't know where to spend that $92 every single month, Jonathan. Like, it was coming in hand over fist, whether I liked it or not. And now that's obviously tongue in cheek, because about 3 months into the deal, the apartment above me flooded my unit out. And I probably spent the next, 16 months paying off the Servpro bill that was associated to the situation. But it just was not that appealing. And I didn't understand until we did our first short-term rental in 2020 what I was missing. And it was this idea of we all have an investor DNA. And if you haven't listened to the show before, we talk about this concept about the investor DNA. You can actually go to whatsaboutwallstreet.com/investor DNA. We break that down for you. But it's one of those ideas where we all see the world from a very particular scenario, and your personality, your unique way that you see the world is defined and applies to all these different investment opportunities. And I was looking through there and I realized that my profile hated the boring nature of rental real estate. It just was not very involved. I like to be involved. It was not something, the consistency of the return, it didn't do it for me. I was looking for involvement. I was looking for the ability to influence the outcome, none of which I could do in that specific unit. And it wasn't until we started the short-term rental business in 2020, where I realized that I could influence the outcome. I had the ability to share the thing that we were doing and watch the income be increased by the direct impact of some of the things we were doing. And of course, if you followed our story long enough, you know that we went from having 0 short-term rentals to having over 25 in a really short window of time, like 18 months. And we built a business around it, because that, to me, is my gifting, the investor DNA. I like to build things. I don't like to run things. I don't like to operate things. I like to build things. And the short-term rental business was something that I could do, and lots of other businesses. So the investor DNA revealed that to me. That was a huge lesson that I learned about myself, is when I got that specific insight. All right, so that's about learning here. Let's go into point number 2. Be ready for the opportunity. Jamie, what does that mean to you?
Well, opportunities find cash. I think I first heard 2 somewhat smart guys from Alabama say that on a podcast years ago, right? And so that always stuck with me, is that's true, right? And so if you have cash, opportunities will find that. Or if you have a good opportunity, it's pretty easy to find cash, at least in the real estate game that I've been in and in my experience. But I want to tell you about kind of a deal and what I mean by that. We've talked a lot about a network and surrounding yourself with others who are doing this. And I think there's part of, when I talk about accountability, like putting out into the world what you want to do. So you guys just heard my story about how I learned about the velocity of money. Well, when I started using other people's money to do my real estate deals, I now had a problem. I had my capital doing nothing, right? And so I had to figure out what to do with that. And so I started exploring the private lending space. And as you guys probably know, but if you're listening, you may not know this, those deals can be a little tricky to find, right? You have to usually build some trust with somebody who wants to borrow your money. You have to collateralize the deal. You have to figure all this out. But through telling the world that I wanted to do private lending and I was looking for opportunities, I had this really unique opportunity to come across my table. And it was actually to help a gentleman who had started a coin-operated laundromat. And he wanted to expand his laundromat to add a pickup and drop-off service. It was going to take about $40,000 to build out the back of this building. And we got to talking. We built a relationship. We talked through the deal, and I ended up making that loan, collateralizing that against some of his assets. It was a win-win opportunity. It put my cash to work. It made me a great return. I think I ended up making about 35% return on that deal, just how we built the deal out. And it provided him the capital he needed to expand his business. That business is still there. They're still thriving. We've actually been in contact about them doing our laundry for our short-term rental business. So, I mean, you just never know how these connections and these relationships are going to come full circle, but you have to be ready for them whenever they come across your plate.
No, that's super good. How about for you, Jonathan? Talk a little bit about being ready for the opportunity.
Well, I think there's a huge difference between wishing for an opportunity and preparing for an opportunity. Russ, have you ever walked out the door maybe for the 20th day in a row and it hasn't rained? Maybe you offer up a prayer to the Lord and you say, Lord, we need some rain. I'm praying for rain today. Have you ever done that and then left your house without an umbrella?
Yeah, of course.
I've done that. I think we've all done that. Sometimes we're wishing, we're hoping, but we're not necessarily preparing or expecting something to come by. One of our mutual friends, Jonathan Bates, gave a great quote to me. I don't know that he was trying to put out anything that was tweetable or anything, but he said he was trying to calm me down because I was all over this deal like, oh man, I got to make this happen. I got to make this happen. He was like, just, it'll be all right. The deal of a lifetime comes along about twice a week. And so, if you've got an eye for the opportunity, if you're preparing for the opportunity, if you're getting ready for the opportunity, then the opportunity, just like Jamie was talking about, the opportunity is going to find you. You're going to have your blinders off and you're going to notice the things that are happening. So to the extent that you can know or be prepared, you don't know how to be prepared for everything. A lot of times I'll say, man, if I would have been prepared in 2008 when that real estate crash happened, man, how much money could I have made? Well, now we know that those kinds of things happen. So how do we be prepared for the next market downturn? Maybe for you, your preparedness is getting your accreditation letter. Go ahead and get that signed by your CPA or tax lawyer, whoever that needs to be. Get pre-approval from the bank. If you're into real estate and you know that you're going to be doing something, go ahead and get pre-approval. Be ready to put that offer in. Don't be waiting days. And especially if it's a desirable property, you're not the only one who's noticed it. So be ready to make that move. Keep something as simple as like keeping a file of your pay stubs, digital or otherwise. Keep that stuff around you. Keep your portfolio up to date. If you're looking for a DSCR loan or whatever, keep all that stuff where it's easily turned over to the bank to evaluate. So whatever it is, get ready, stay ready, expect it. One of the things that I was able to do not too long ago was just get a HELOC on my house. A HELOC is a home equity line of credit. And so if you're out there, you're like a lot of us, you've got a lot of equity in your primary residence, maybe in second homes or your real estate portfolio. And that's a lot of dead equity. It's just sitting there. Maybe it's providing some security, but it's probably not, because it's providing the bank an opportunity to rob you blind whenever you're not looking. But you've got this equity in your house and it's not doing anything. It's not producing anything. So a home equity line of credit, other than a life insurance policy, is a great way to tap into some of your net worth to be able to get it working for you. So I was able to get a home equity line of credit on our primary residence. It was ready. It was waiting. Whenever the property came available that we wanted to buy in Orlando, a short-term rental, 6-bedroom, 6-bath, beautiful house with a pool, installed a remote system where I could run the pool temperature from my house in South Carolina in Orlando. I mean, it was awesome. But people were all over the market at that time. If I would not have been ready, I couldn't have gotten that access to that cash, access to that equity in my property that quickly to be able to turn around, make an offer, and to beat out some of these other people if I hadn't been ready with the HELOC. So you can get the pre-approval, you can get access to the cash. You don't have to do anything with it. You can just wait for your opportunity to come around. So ended up flipping that house in Orlando in a self-managed short-term rental after I had put it in that situation. Made a lot of money, and it was because I was ready for that opportunity.
Tribe, listen up. We're entering into the election year. This is the time where people are going to get super fearful. We're going to see businesses start to dry up. We're going to see opportunities, though, pile up for us only if we're prepared.
That's right. You get to choose right now. Will you allow this time frame to negatively affect you and your business and your investments? Or will you be prepared to take advantage of these huge opportunities that come on the backside of this because you're prepared with cash?
Let's get our house in order. If you haven't already maximized the infinite banking concept in your life, here's the chance for you to start learning. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/IBC. Take our free webinar so that you can start getting equipped with the things that you need to know so that you can take action on this looming event.
You mentioned just people around you giving you insight, giving you support around that. And I want to call you right now. If you're someone who is making $300,000 or more a year, you're looking to be around people who are building passive income streams on a regular basis that are exceeding their monthly expenses, and you want to have conversations like the one that Jonathan was talking about he had, I want to encourage you to go to thepassiveincomemastermind.com and apply to see if this is the kind of room that you should be in. We get together on a regular basis. We have conversation not only around the deals but more importantly, how do we become better investors? How do we actually get to the point where our passive income exceeds our monthly expenses by 2 times? Because when we get there, now we can pursue purpose and passion. We can start passing things down to those around us. So go to thepassiveincomemastermind.com and apply if that sounds like where you need to be. Well, for me, guys, I mean, this kind of goes in line with what that was just saying there. It's all about leveraging relationships. It's about seeing the opportunity and being able to take advantage of it. And I would say it's because I've spent a lot of time around people who think really big. That has rubbed off on me. I don't believe I've created anything new. I know they call me the idea guy. I always like to make fun of that, saying, well, it doesn't mean good idea guy. It just means idea guy. But I'm not really, have this sense of creating something that's never existed. I tend to see things and try to apply it into my life. Like I see it, how it's working there. I go, oh, if it works there, I wonder if it applies here. Well, I've seen that with businesses. I've seen like how Joey and I have been able to build a number of different businesses. out of investments. And one of those started in this thing that we were doing a long time ago. We started 2019 going to the Land Geek boot camps, and we started our own little land flipping business. And it was me and Joey, and at the time, an executive assistant, and she had wanted to flip houses like Jamie. And we were like, you want to flip houses? You can flip land. Same basically premise, right? I mean, we're flipping and they're both in the real estate game. Now they're completely opposite. They're not anything alike. There's a lot of differences in them, but for Joey and I's purpose, it was exactly the same. Well, in that process, we started, taking Mark Podolsky's course. Like he has this toolkit, and then we did the flight school, which it was like going through a training with a group of people. And then we showed up at one of his boot camps, it has 100, 150 people. And we're learning this stuff. And it's just like, man, fascinated by the number of people who were buying these little raw pieces of land. Like, when I say raw pieces of land, like some people are like, you're thinking about ranches. I'm talking about like half acre lots. I mean, like little bitty, nothing burger land. They're buying it for as little as like $500 total. And turn around and selling it for 3, 4, 5x. And most of the time they're selling it on terms. And like we're seeing thousands of people over 3, 4, 5, 6 years of doing this, and they're all having success. Well, Joey and I were like, man, how can we leverage our relationship? How can we make this a business and maybe just partner with someone who's already an expert? And so that's what we did. We found an expert in the space, someone who had already figured out all of those things, right? Like it's one of those things where if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And we're like, we want to go far. Let's find somebody who's already figured this out. Let's partner with them. And that's what we did. And since we've done that over the last 4 years, our experience, right? This isn't probably a normal experience, but our experience, we've averaged a little over 40-something% return on investment. That's close to 5x our contribution is what the value of our business is worth, which is just dumb. We've exceeded over $31,000 a month in total gross note income from this business. And like, to me, this is like being ready, like being prepared, like not only being a student, like we talked about in the first point of always being in a position of learning, but also looking for opportunity and figuring out how to capitalize on it, how to approach those relationships, how to structure those deals. Those are all things that we were doing so that we would be ready for that opportunity. And that's been, as you watch our monthly passive income report every single month, is one of the leading things on our list came out of that specific situation. All right, as we've talked about always being in a posture of learning and being ready for an opportunity, let's go to our third point, Jamie. Let's talk a little bit about rule number 1 of investing. What is rule number 1 of investing, by the way?
Man, protect the downside, right? Never lose money, is Warren Buffett says, is how I'd like to think about it. And that's a hard one, right? I mean, if we think about investing in nature, investing inherently has some risk associated with it, right? And that just is part of the game. But how do we protect that downside as much as possible? I'm going to tell you a story. We never know what's going to happen in life, right? And Jonathan, to your point, be careful what you wish for and be prepared, right? So I was in the medical device world for 14 years. Last 6 years have been doing real estate investing on the side, going on 7 years now. In the last couple of years of my W-2 career, I was telling my wife, like, hey, I want to try this thing full time. I want to try and give this a go. I want to give this a go. And back to the be careful what you wish for. In January of 22, I was laid off from my job, right? I lost it overnight. And good thing was we were prepared. We had started our infinite banking policies. We had saved a decent amount of cash or stored a decent amount of cash within those policies that allowed me to take that leap, to take that chance on myself, to invest in myself and leave the job, right? To leave that behind. And so we had to use our emergency fund as I got my feet under me, try to figure out what the next chapter of life looked like, trying to do real estate full time. I was doing some construction gigs for other people, absolutely hated it. And, God's timing is never wrong. Joey and I had missed each other for months on something totally unrelated and caught up, 3 or 4 months into my new venture and said, hey, you understand IBC, you understand passive income. Would you like to come help others learn about this and help them change their life as well? I was like, I can't think of a better opportunity for me to kind of combine work with passion, and have been doing that ever since. But the long and the short of this story is I stored my cash in a place that never stopped growing. When I had to use money out of my opportunity fund, that money wasn't really gone, right? I just had created a spot for future windfalls. So now that my feet are back under me, my investing's taken off, making some better active income, I'm able to refill that hole, and I've never lost the growth on the dollar that I had to use to just survive for a little bit of time. And so the big thing for me is like, where we store our capital is important, because there's going to be life events, whether it's your car breaking down, whether it's getting laid off from a job like it was in my case, where we're going to have to spend money. But do we store it in a place where we have the ability to refill and never lose the growth? Or do we give up the opportunity cost of having to spend that money and never give it the opportunity to earn again?
Oh, so good, man. I love that. Definitely a way to avoid loss. How about for you, Jonathan? What does rule number one of investing mean to you?
Oh, due diligence. Due diligence. Whenever I first started getting into my investing journey, probably 2 days after I had that phone call with Bill that I was telling you about, I started into some tax lien investing. It was me and YouTube University. That's all I knew to do, just go search it out, ask the people around me. And so I started getting into tax lien investing. And so in Greenville County, where I live, like a lot of counties in the United States, actually, you can get a 12% APR, and it's divided by quarter. And so whenever you look at this tax lien list, you're looking for properties, of course, that you want to own in the future. If the person pays the taxes, you're going to get the interest rate, your money back plus a return. And then if the person doesn't pay the taxes, well, then you're going to have this property that you can go through the process of clearing the deed and then taking possession of fully and be able to sell it, rent it, whatever you want to do with it. Well, I got the bright idea. Like, I don't have to go buy these properties. I can get on Google Maps, and I can, use that little man and then drag him down the street, and I can look around and I can see which properties that I want to get. Well, so I paid the taxes on this property, invested this money into this tax lien, and I got the property. Initially, whenever I get the letter in the mail, I was elated, like, oh my goodness, I've got this property. I'm going to be able to make so much money. This is going to be great. Do I flip it? Do I rent it? My brain is just exploding with all this excitement. And so I get to the property. And if you've never looked at your own house in Google Maps, Street View, you should go do that. It'll give you the lesson, because you're going to go, you know what? Our door hasn't been that color in 10 years. Our shutters haven't been that color in 10 years. We don't, the barn in the back isn't even the same color anymore. And so that's what happened. This house that looked so great on the Street View of the maps, now suddenly the walls are falling in, the place is grown up. There's no windows. I mean, it's just bombed out. The water has damaged the whole thing. And so basically I get an empty lot, but it's even worse than an empty lot. If I'm going to do anything with it, I have to pay to get the house torn down. So I'm just upside down in this property. Usually when you get a tax lien property, sometimes the easiest thing to do is go to the neighbors who've been, they've been watching this thing sit empty, especially if it's an empty lot, and they're dreaming about what they could do. Oh man, I wish I could get this property, but they don't know how to go do the deal. You can go to those neighbors and sell it. I went to the neighbors and nobody wanted the property. It was in that bad a shape, and everybody knew that it was going to take a lot of work and a lot of money to clean it up. And so about a year later, after spending a lot of weekends trying to clean the place up, putting money into it, not necessarily to fix it up, but just to get it presentable to somebody, maybe, driving nearly an hour, 2-hour round trip, I finally sell the property for the almost exact amount of money that I put into the property to one of the neighbors. And so I have a year of time and energy wasted because I didn't do the proper due diligence. I was depending on Google Maps to be accurate.
Now, I would say you got a heck of a lesson.
It was a lesson, and an expensive lesson, paid for in time, blood, sweat, and tears. That's for sure. And then another story, someone mentioned whenever you threw it out to the community, don't invest in a Ponzi scheme. Well, Russ, if you remember, we kind of had a convergence of people who had invested in a Ponzi scheme. And, what are the lessons we learned from investing in a Ponzi scheme? I think there were like 7 things. You need to check this, you need to do this, you need to do that. And we were going down that list, and I was going, I did that. Can't learn that lesson. I did that. I can't learn that lesson. I did that. I can't learn that lesson. So at the end of that call, I was like, okay, well, there's no lessons for me to learn, and I still lost a bunch of money. What can I learn? Well, the main thing that I needed to learn is don't put quite so many eggs in one basket. It didn't kill me. It didn't take away all my net worth or anything whenever I lost some money in a Ponzi scheme, but I did do the math going, if I lose all this money, what's this going to mean? Okay, well, it means that I'm not broke. That's probably not the threshold that I'm going to use next time whenever I invest in a deal. So, in some ways it's don't lose money, but in other ways it's assume that you're going to lose money. And if you do, are you okay with losing that much? And how much do you want to have your wealth spread out into various things? Ecclesiastes 11:2, Solomon tells us, invest into 7 investments, or maybe even 8, because you never know what calamity is going to come upon the earth. And so whenever you can protect against the locust on one hand and protect against the pine beetles or what, I don't know what he was protecting against, the people coming from the sea, when you can protect against various things that might happen and not have everything in one spot, that's a great way to protect the downside.
I love that. Well, we're breaking down here kind of different strategies of ways that you can avoid losing money and maybe some of the lessons within them. I've shared this story before on the podcast, but maybe you're a newer listener, you haven't heard it, and I think it's worthy. Like, the more we learn how to do things better, differently, gives us strategic advantage over the person out there that doesn't know these things. And we've had a number of different guests on our podcast and have spoken at a lot of events that have taught on creative finance and ways to purchase real estate in particular. You can use it and apply it to business, but of being able to purchase real estate to where you can minimize a lot of the expenses that go along with doing traditional mortgages. And we had a guest on the podcast who was talking about how to buy properties subject to the mortgage. And if you don't know this, you can actually buy the house and the mortgage can be a part of it. Now, this is a very little known function, and it's called subject to the mortgage. Well, Joey and I were looking to buy a short-term rental that we would do like a luxury type of venue where we would do corporate events at. We would be able to host large wedding parties. And it was an idea that didn't exist in Birmingham. We had stayed in one similar in Nashville, just south of Nashville. It was like $3,000 a night. It was a great experience. It was rented out like 200 and something nights a year. I was like, man, we're going to kill it. This property happened to be in my neighborhood. Now, I live out on some acres, and every property has at least 10 to 15 acres around it. This one happened to be sitting and sharing a pond of like 30, 40 acres. And so I thought, this thing is going to be fantastic. The people who owned it were moving to another neighborhood. They posted in our group of 13 property owners that they were going to be putting it up for market. So I went to them and I said, hey, I would like to purchase the property, but I would like to do it also by taking over your mortgage. I want to buy your house subject to. And the person who was selling it to us was smart enough to understand what that meant because he worked in finance. And so we did. And so we started down this road of getting it prepared for putting it on the short-term rental market. Had a contractor that was coming and doing some renovations. We're getting ready to add a couple of rooms to be able to make it even more bedrooms for our purpose. And one of our neighbors got wind of what was happening, and they raised, I don't know how to say this politely. They got really mad about it. And they went and told the mayor about it, and this was just this whole big to-do. And so one of the things I learned is that even though you can do some due diligence, maybe, you probably need to go a little bit deeper on what truly is possible. So we had to end up going through the process of trying to sell it because we no longer were going to be able to do the short-term rental. And man, we learned all sort of lessons in this. I mean, we had the calamity of errors, if you will. We had a guy who wanted to buy the house with Bitcoin, but yet then we needed to figure out, how do you accept Bitcoin in escrow, like to be able to put the earnest money down. We had to pay for attorneys who figured that could actually close a property in Alabama using Bitcoin. None of them had done that. All of these things were spending money. And ultimately, we end up selling the property, not to the Bitcoin guy, by the way. He didn't actually have any Bitcoin. Shocker. But the only thing that kept us from losing money, the only thing that kept us from going negative on this, is the fact that when we sold it, we were able to avoid all of those mortgage costs on the front end, and we netted about $30-something thousand. And on a house the size of what it was, we would have probably spent somewhere close to $40,000 on all those traditional mortgage fees that would have had us upside down. So for me, the creative finance model was the lesson that I learned that I need to be better at. And in this situation was the thing that kept me from losing money in the deal. Well, we gave you a couple of different ideas of lessons that we've learned. I would love to hear from you. If you don't mind, share in the comments of wherever you're watching this, if it's a review or if it's on Facebook or YouTube. Would love to hear what are the greatest lessons you've learned. And if you are not part of a community of people who are talking about this on a regular basis and you want to be in community, be supported by those around you, go to what'swallstreet.com/community right now. We'd love to have you be a part of our group, and we can help each other as we get closer to having more passive income than we have monthly expenses. Have a fantastic day.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.